Hi, this is Angelo, back to the grumpy old IT guy. That's right, you heard me, the grumpy old IT guy. And welcome to my grumpy podcast, Creating Views. This is the fourth podcast in the beginning TSQL podcast series. Okay, so each podcast has a demo or two, or maybe more, so pay attention, all right, guys? And by the way, there'll be two other series of podcasts, which I hope you'll find useful and helpful. There'll be podcasts for intermediate TSQL topics, and there'll be podcasts for advanced TSQL topics. Now, after taking the series, you'll be able to perform development tasks associated with a TSQL developer, or maybe even a TSQL data architect. Here's a little grumpy alert. Okay, this podcast and the others in this series will only cover the basics. So please look to my full 2020 Grumpy University for in-depth courses on these topics. But first, okay, by now you're probably saying, who is this grumpy old IT guy anyway? Well, that's me. I'm a published author and data architect with over 30 years of experience in BI, data architecture, data warehousing, and data modeling. And before that, I was an electrical engineer. Now, in the last 10 years, I've also participated in several large-scale master data and data quality initiatives. And to support these, I've achieved CIMP certification in master data and data quality. Now, I have to admit, I do love the Microsoft BI stack, and I've been using SQL Server for more years I care to mention. Does anyone remember SQL Server 2000, for example? Well, I go earlier than that. And I can hear all the grumbling and moans out there. Guys are saying, wow, this guy's dating himself. That's all right. Anyway, by the way, BI stands for Business Intelligence, in case you haven't heard of that acronym. And lastly, I hold a master's degree in computer science from New York Polytechnic University and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, way back when Pratt Institute had an engineering program. Now, both of these schools were in good old Brooklyn, USA, and I have to say those were the days. I had a great time, learned a lot, and met a lot of great people, and I did my little bit of goofing off, too. Oh, and by the way, here's a little grumpy alert. I'm now the founder and president of Grumpy Old IT Guy, so get ready to learn the grumpy way. Here's what we'll cover in this podcast. We'll be creating views with SQL Server Management Studio's SSMS, specifically the Object Explorer component. We'll also be creating views with TSQL. And of course, after we've created these views, we'll be dropping views with SSMS and dropping views with TSQL. Okay, and along the way, I'll show you a system store procedure called SP_depends. Now, this store procedure shows you dependencies between objects. And you might be saying, why is this important? Well, I'll tell you. It's important because if you modify or alter a view, you might break other views, stored procedures, and functions that are dependent on it. Or if you drop a table, you might break a view that uses it. So make sure you use this before you change any database objects, not only views, but tables, stored procedures, triggers, and functions. It works on all of them. Okay, topic one. Let's see how to create a view with SQL Server Management Studio. So it's pretty simple. Start off by just right-clicking on the Views folder and click on a new view. And what happens? You're presented with a design panel and also a pop-up Add Table panel. So basically all you do is pick up the tables that you need. Now in this little clip, we're going to create a view based on the department table and the employee table, both in the master data schema. So we would be picking those, all right? And you can also, by the way, hit the refresh button, and that'll refresh the list of available tables, all right? So once you pick the tables you wanted, just click on the close button. And SQL Server is pretty smart. If you have columns, like in this case, department ID, in both tables, it builds the relationship for you. All right, and then as you can see there in the lower half of that design pane, you pick all the columns that you need, and you see the query being built. All right, so it's a pretty powerful tool. And oh, by the way, you'll learn all about joins in my next podcast, Podcast 5 TSQL DML. But for now, just realize that when you create views with multiple tables, you need to somehow establish a relationship between them. Now, in this case, we're implementing the business rule that a department can have 0, 1, or more employees. And the common column is that department ID column. Now, if Management Studio here doesn't create that join for you, because, for example, the columns are named slightly different, you can click on the parent column, in this case, the department ID column, and then you can drag it over to the employee table and click on, the column that you want to establish the join to, or the relationship. So it's pretty easy. And then once you've picked all the columns and defined all the joins, all you really need to do is to click on that little X that's in the tab there of the design panel, and this little choose name dialog box will pop up. Then you type in a good name. Employee salary view is what I've put in. Basically employee underscore salary underscore view. And I always end my view names with the word view, so it's really clear in a query. It differentiates it from a table. And again, notice the query is built for you behind the scenes that the view will be based on. Okay, and oh yeah, there's our little X. That's what you need to click to generate that choose name dialog box. So once the view is created, right, you can just say, okay, exit out. And then after the fact, like me most of the times, you realize that you forgot to put the view in the correct schema. Now, I could have done that in the design pane, but after the fact, I can go in and right-click on the view. All right, the design pane will come up again. And then I right-click anywhere in the design pane and click Properties. And then the Properties panel pops up. And there in the schema, where you see schema, there's a little list box. And you can scroll down and basically pick the correct schema that you want the view to go to. And that's really all that there's to it. So why don't we just go right into a demo and see how all of this is done. Here comes our first demo, creating views with SSMS. So here's a SQL Server Management Studio. And I've got some comments here that are going to serve as a specification. So let's just scroll down here. I just have some drop view commands just in case these views already existed, because I'm going to create them with SSMS. So I'll right-click on the view folder, and no, I don't have those views. So let's take a look at these specifications. I'm going to create 2 views. One is called Employee Department View, and there's the logical name, the physical name, and physical table name. Now, the logical name is a business-friendly name that we're going to eventually assign to the view. Once it's created, we'll have to modify it. Then there's the physical column name, that's the actual columns. And finally, the tables they come from. So from the employee table, the HR employee table, we're going to pick the employee first name and the employee last name. And then from the employee table also we'll pick the hire date. And then from the department table, we'll pick the department name. Okay, so it's a pretty simple view. And as you can see there, the join column will be the department ID. Now, if we scroll down a little bit more, we're going to have a more complicated view. There's the employee salary view. It's going to be called EMP underscore salary underscore view. And this one's a little more complex because we're going to have to join 3 tables. We're going to pull columns out of the department table, the employee table, and the salary table. So from the department table, we're pulling out the department ID and also the department name. And we got a little typo here. We have it twice, so let's just get rid of it. Then we'll pick out the manager ID from the department table. And then from the employee table, we'll pick out 3 columns: the employee first name, the last name, and the hire date. And finally, from the salary table, we'll pick the salary column. And here's our join conditions. So between HR department and HR employee, we're going to use the department ID column. And then between the employee table and the payroll table, we'll use the employee ID column. I just realized I might want to make this consistent for you guys when you download the code. So I am going to replace this little join specification here and just pop it in here so everything looks the same. Okay, so pretty simple, I think, right? So let's go ahead and create these 2 views. So I'm going to right click on the view folder and select new view, and I have to pick my table. So I'm going to add the department table and the employee table and close this. Now I want to be able to see this specification, so I'm going to right click on this second query window, pick on new vertical tab. Now the way you do that, by the way, if I did that quick, I right click on the tab, select new vertical tab group, and there's my specification. Let me just make this a little larger, drag this over here so I can see all of the columns. All right, so here we are in good shape. Now, Object Explorer was smart enough, it was able to link up the 2 tables over the department ID column, so that's good. Now, if you look over here at the bottom, you'll see a select query, which is starting to be built. So you probably don't know too much about select queries yet, because we're going to cover them in podcast 5. But this is a good way to learn too as to how SQL selects are created. So right now, all it's showing the that is picking from the department table, and it's doing an inner join with the employee table and on the department ID column. So let's pick the columns that we want next. All right, so there's the, let's see, we want the department name. Actually, we'll do the employee name first, and the last name, and the hire date. Let's just follow the specification, and then the department name. So that's pretty much it. That's what our query looks like. Now we could actually test this query out by highlighting it, right click to copy it, select new query, and paste it. And let's see, it's all over here, and executing it. So it looks like it works. So it's a good idea to test these queries out before you create the view. So let's get rid of this query pane. No, I don't want to save it. So I'm pretty much finished here. So I'm going to click on the old X to save it. It's going to say save changes to the following items. I'm going to say yes. And I want the employee department view name, EMP DEPT view. That's the name I'm going to use. Okay, just click on OK here and refresh. So there's that view, but lo and behold, it's in the wrong schema. So I can right click on it. I could have done this earlier when the design pane was up, but let's just right click on it, go to properties. Okay, and now we're going to right click again in the, we're going to say OK. We didn't want the properties. I made a mistake. We want the design. That's what we want. All right. Now we're going to right click on properties here in the design pane. There's the schema drop down list box. And we're going to pop this into the HR table. How's that? HR schema rather. And we get a little message: changing the schema of this object will result in all current permissions on this object being dropped. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yep. Good message. I'll say yes. So now we've moved this view to the HR schema. So all we need to do is click on the X again. It's going to say save changes to the following items, and we're going to say yes. All right, so now if we refresh our views folder, we'll see that that view is now in the correct schema. Okay, pretty good. All right, let's go down and do our second view. There's our second specification. So let's get rid of this properties pane for now. And let's click on views, new view again. And this time we want, oh, I think it was all three tables, wasn't it? So we'll pick the department table, the employee table, and the salary table. Click on close. Let's get those specifications visible again. New vertical tab group. Okay, let's make a little room here. Let's just put this down here and down here. We'll expand them so we can see all the columns that we need to pick. So notice those joins, the relationships I was talking about, are automatically created for you. Okay, what do we want? We want the department ID from the department table and the department name and the manager ID. Then from the employee table, we want the employee first name, and then we want the employee last name. And finally, we want the hire date and the salary. So that looks like it's complete. So what do we need to do? Well, let's cut and paste this whole query that was generated for us. Okay, right click on it, highlight it, right click on it, say copy. Once again, new query, paste it, and execute it. So this hopefully will work. It's a three-way join and looks good. Okay, I got all the information, the department information, the employee name, the first and last name, the hire date, and the salaries. So that was pretty good. Let's close this query pane. I don't need to save it. You could save it if you wanted to, but we'll say no. So now what do we need to do? Well, we need to look at the properties. This time we're going to shift it over to the correct schema before we save it. Scroll down, we'll pop this. Oh, I'm going to put this also in the HR schema. Okay, so we're good. Now we click on the X. Save the changes, yes. And what is the view name? It's EMP Salary View. Click on OK. And we should be done. Let's refresh it. Well, we're actually not done, are we? Because when we look at these two views we created and look at the columns, they're all the physical names. So I'm going to show you a trick. Let me get rid of the properties here. I am going to generate what's called the DCL, data control language, that was used to create the view. I'm going to right click on this, script view, create to a new query window. I'm going to actually say alter to a new query window. All right. Here comes the view right now. It's generating the DDL. I'm going to tidy this up a little bit because I want all of the columns vertically because I'm going to rename them. Let me just get rid of some of this noise here. Let's go back to our specification. New vertical tab. Very good. Let's do this. I now want to rename these columns into these logical columns. So I'm going to copy rather the logical names, right? No sense in doing typing. I'm going to put in the keyword as and 2 square brackets, opening and closing. And whoops, I didn't copy the name there, the last character. I'm going to do the same for the first name. So let's get that first name. Okay, cooperate with me. It's not cooperating with me today. I love it when the mouse likes to mess around. All right, I've copied last name, and finally the department name. All right, where is it? Here it is, department name. Okay, put those square brackets, and I'm going to paste them in. Oops. Pasted them right before the square brackets. So that looks good. Let's check the syntax. Looks good. And let's execute this alter view command. All right, let's refresh our views folder. Let's look at the department view now. So notice the names, they've been changed to the more user-friendly name. So if we right-click on this view and select top 1,000 rows, notice that nice report. It has all of these friendly names instead of the physical names. Okay, so let's close that, and we don't need this either. So we'll say no. So what do we need to do now? Well, we need to do the same thing here for the employee salary. All right, there's the employee salary. We actually use the logical names from the employee salary view, but fortunately they are the same. We should have taken the logical names from the employee department view spec. And that's what happens when you rush a little bit. So let's scroll down to this employee salary view, and I'm only going to do one column, and then I'm going to fast forward. So let's right click on employee salary view. Okay, there's the old script view, alter to a new query window. All right, let's put our specification in a new vertical tab group again. All right, so let me tidy this up so we see all the columns on in a vertical view, if you will. So just a quick review here. There's a lot of columns. I'm going to add the as and the square brackets. Now, if I want to cheat, I can copy and paste these partial code here just to speed things up. All right. A couple more to go. Whoops. Paste. And paste, and one more. Okay, so now I'm going to start with the department ID, and I'm just going to do one of these, and then I'll fast forward to show you the completed query. Right, so now you see the technique. All right, so let me fast forward. Okay, here's all the names were filled in correctly. Okay, now before I alter this view, I could also highlight just the select statement part of it. I could execute it to make sure it works, and there it is. Looks pretty good. Okay, not too bad. Very good. So now I'm going to alter this view. So now once it's completed, I should refresh this view here. And let's see, it did pick up the names. So I want to do a little analysis, because when I executed this query, I saw 17 rows, and if I recall, there was 16 rows in the employee table. So I'm going to select new query, just type this in, make a little room for myself, and I want to order by, I'm going to order by let's see, the employee first name and last name. Okay, we're going to do a little debugging here on the fly to make sure that there's no problems with the joins that were generated. So I'm going to do an order by clause, which we're going to cover in podcast 8, by the way. We don't need that as in the order by clause. So let's execute it. And let's see, do we have any doubles? Yes, we happen to have some doubles for employee E001. Why is that? Okay, so now we got to do some debugging here. Let's look at the employee table. All right, let's click on the employee table and select the rows. And for where's Mr. Dilby here? Let's order by the same clause. I think we can just paste this here. Actually, no, they're named different. So we're going to order by these two columns. A little on-the-fly debugging to see if there's an issue or not. And this is stuff that you'll be doing. Order by employee, first name and last name. So Mr. where was he, Dilby, there's definitely only one record here. Let's take a look at the salary table next. Here's a different way of writing a query. Select star from the salary table. Now, we're trying to debug the problem with what could be a double record. So let's order by employee ID. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, so we have 17 records here, and the doubles are for employee 13. So let's go back and look at our results here. We have Mr. Dilby 2 times and employee 13 twice also. Well, those are the managers. I'm sorry, the managers. All right, but for some reason we have Donald Dilby twice. So it looks like Mr. Dilby has 2 employee salaries. Let's go back here and look at Mr. Dilby. That was employee record number 1, so that's interesting. Okay, I modified this query by adding the employee ID, and it turns out that everything is correct. What the problem was is I was seeing the manager ID appear twice. It's actually the employee ID we want. So if we sort by employee ID instead, as I did here, you can see that it's employee E013 Donald Dilby, who had the 2 records which are correct. All right, there was a raise given for this employee. So it's very easy to confuse. So instead of just having the manager ID but no employee ID, I think we want to take this employee ID column, come back here to this view, and add it right after the manager ID. Whoops. So now we're going to alter this view so that it includes the new column and the user-friendly names. All right, so let's check the syntax. Let's execute it. And now we're going to select the columns as a final test. Select from, and we're going to order by. So now let's refresh our views folder. Okay, and there's our HR employee salary view, and we're going to order by the employee ID column. And let's make sure that everything looks good. Oh, no, I need a star here. So let's execute this. Let's look at these results. And where do I have 2 records for an employee? It's employee 13, Donald Dilby, with two raises. Okay, now if I wanted to show that he got a raise, I can actually say employee ID, ordered by employee ID, and then by the, where is it? The salary. There it is, employee salary. So now I'm ordering by two columns. So now we see Mr. Dilby's salary. The first one was $50,000. The second one was $86,418. All right, so that's a little bit clearer. So we created two views or three views with SSMS. We tested them out. We had some assumptions. There was a couple of little issues. We weren't sure about the data, so we did some debugging, but we got everything right. So let's just get rid of these and this little query. So we saw how to do a little debugging and analysis when we created the views. So definitely the closeout here is you can create views with SSMS, but it's good to have some basic SQL skills so that you can debug possible data issues. So that should be it for this demo. So we can get back to our clip where we're going to learn how to create views with TSQL. Okay, topic 2, create a view with TSQL. Now, creating basic views with DDL commands, data declaration commands, which are a subset of TSQL, is simple. The basic syntax is create a view, or create view, I should say, supply a schema name, a period, and then a view name. Then the keyword as, and then a query. The simplest query would be select a whole bunch of columns from a table. And you can also use more than one table or other views or functions that return tables in your view. Now, if using more than one table, make sure you use the correct join predicates. So you might be saying, what is he talking about? What's a join predicate? Well, see my podcast number 5, TSQL DML, and you'll find out. Here's a little old grumpy alert. Well, there it is. Check out podcast 5. Now test the query that you're going to use to make sure that it behaves before actually creating a view. So let's take a look at the view in this clip. We're supplying the command create or alter view. Then there's that schema name, the period, and the view name is employee underscore salary underscore view. There's that keyword as, and there's our query. So we're selecting columns from two tables, basically the employee table and the payroll table. And then I should say the payroll.salary table. And then we're joining them on the employee ID column that's common to both tables. And we're selecting the employee ID, department ID, the employee long name, and then the salary, the to date, and the from date. Now notice that the column names are completely qualified. In other words, I'm supplying the schema name, the table name, and the employee ID, for example. Well, you don't have to be that verbose. All you need to do is supply the column names. And it's good to be verbose, though, in the from clause. So there you see from HR.employee and inner join payroll.salary, where HR and payroll are the schema names. And finally, you're joining them on the employee ID column, as I stated before. So it's pretty simple. Okay, let's go and do another demo, and let's create a view with TSQL. Let's bring up SQL Server Management Studio. Let's scroll down here and find the section of our script, creating views with TSQL. So there it is. Create view, the schema name, the employee department view. Now I got a little red underline there, employee department view. We already have one. Okay, so that's why we're getting that little red underline there. So let's copy and paste this little command here to drop the view and replace the old view name with this view. And let's see if this little red squiggly goes away. All right, so let's just drop the view. And actually, we should go to human resources. We should go to the correct database before we do anything. And sure enough, fortunately, that little red underlined squiggly disappeared. So let's take a look here. We're going to create that HR employee department view. There's the query as select, and we're renaming each of the physical columns from the department and employee table to more user-friendly names, right? We see the department underscore ID is department ID, department underscore name is department name, and then we got manager ID and employee ID and employee first name and last name. So we're taking these columns from the department table. So notice we're aliasing the HR department table with a D, and we're prefixing the first three column names in the select clause with a D, and then we're doing an inner join with the employee table, the HR employee table, and we're using E as an alias. So the last three columns have E's prefixing them. And we're joining on the comment column, the department ID column. So we can test this query out. And looks like it works. Now, you might be saying, hey, can we sort? Well, we can sort in the query itself, but look what happens if we try to create a view we'll order by department ID. If we try to create a view where the select statement has an order by clause, all right, let's alter this view. So the view already exists, and it just won't let you do it. It'll give you that little error message. The order by clause is invalid in views, inline functions, etc. So here's what you do. Just comment it out. See, you can execute the query only when you're testing it out, just to see that everything looks good, but you can't use it in the create statement. Okay, so just comment it out. We'll put the create back in here. Okay, let's create another view, employee salary view. This time it's going to be a little bit more complicated. All right, we're going to create a view that's based on three tables: the department table, the employee table as before, and then we're going to join it to the salary table because we would like some salary information. So again, pretty simple. Create view, the schema name is HR, and the new view name is employee salary view, which, by the way, we have. All right, let's just refresh this view folder. So if we try to create this view now, we'll get an error message because it already exists. So we'll have to drop it. All right, so let's take one more quick look. Notice the from clause now. We're doing an inner join between department and employee, and the same aliases as before, D and E, and we're joining on department ID and in both tables. And then we're doing a second inner join on the payroll salary table. We're giving it an alias of PS, and we're joining on the employee ID column in both tables. So let's just create this view, and we'll drop it at the same time. All right, so there it is. So we're in business now. Now, if you'd like to sort by certain columns, you can create a little select statement on the fly. And check this out. Instead of typing all of the columns in this view, we just click on the column word, drag it here, and we get all of the names. All right, but we have to tweak them a little bit because some of these names have, well, most of them, as you can see, have a space. That's why you need these square brackets. So a little typing here is required, all right? And the red line will not go away yet because I don't have a from clause. Okay, But here's how you can create a TSQL query with a little help from Object Explorer. Oops, there's an extra square bracket. Hit the return key from the view. Okay, so the red lines disappeared. And let's see, what do we want to order this little report by? Oh, let's order it by department ID. All right, and by employee ID. And then just put a little go in there. And that should be good. Order by. Anytime you see that red underline, there's a little hint that something is not quite right. So let's execute the query. And there it is, the results. As you can see, they're sorted by department ID. And then within each department, there's a subsort by employee ID. So it works out pretty good. Okay, so let's return back to our clip. Topic 3, drop views with SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. Here's a little grumpy alert there. Back up the view DDL first and store it in a safe folder dedicated to code backup. All right, back it up. Now, dropping a view with Object Explorer is easy, real easy. Just follow these steps. Right-click on the view and click Delete. And a little panel pops up. So just review the name and the confirmation panel. And make sure that you selected the correct view to update. All right. Click the Show Dependencies button to show objects that are dependent on this view. Now, this is really, really important, okay? Make sure that you're not deleting a view that's important to other objects. In other words, you might have another view that references this view. So if you delete this view, you're going to break that other view. All right, so just make sure that you delete what you think you want to delete, because little grumpy wisdom, once it's gone, it's gone. All right, and this is the little pop-up window that you see, a little nice report that shows you all of the dependent objects. So you can either see objects that the view depends on, or objects that depend on the view. So make sure you check all this out. There you go, check those dependencies. All right, that was a real quick clip. Let's see how this is done in another demo. Okay, here we are in SQL Server Management Studio. We're going to drop a view in Object Explorer. Just a quick review. There's that SP_depends, and I'm passing it the name of the employee salary view. So if I run this little store procedure, it'll show you all the objects that this view depends on. Right? You see the various tables: department, employee, the payroll.salary, and also all of the columns. And let's do an SP depends on employee. So now employee, there's a relationship with all those views, with the employee department view, the employee salary view, the employee department view, and the employee salary view. They're both the same views, if you'll forgive me with the names. The first begin with EMP and the second set with employee, right? They're just created so that we can create them basically and drop them without getting too fancy. So let's create a view that's dependent on an existing view. All right, so that completed. And now I'm going to run an SP depends on employee salary view to the new view. So notice that it depends on the employee salary view, which depends on all of these columns. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to drop the parent view, which would be employee salary view. We're going to right click on it. We're going to click on delete. We'll review the information. And we'll also check on dependencies. There's a second way you can check on dependencies. Right here, there's a Show Dependencies button. So it's running. So it's showing you that this view is being referenced by employee salary view 2. And then if we go here and click on objects on which employee salary view depends on, it'll run a new report, and it'll show you that it depends on the salary table and the employee table and the department table. Okay, so let's just click and ignore the dependencies, and we're going to go ahead and delete this view. So it's gone. So let's refresh our views folder. There's our new employee salary view 2, but now watch what happens when you try to select the top 1,000 rows. All right, you're going to get an error, right? Because we deleted the dependent, the view that this view is dependent on. So the employee salary view is gone. This view is broken. So what do we need to do? Well, we're just going to delete this view. Okay. Also, I had promised you to show you how to create the DCL commands, the DCL, data control language commands that will generate the code. So if we click on employee salary, for example, and script view, create to a new query window, all right, there it is. It created the, I said DCL, that's data control language. I'm sorry, that's security. We're talking about DDL, data declaration language command. Create view is one of them. So it does show you all of this information, and it shows you the create view command. But it also gives you all this other junk, by the way. So it seems like when a view is created with SSMS Object Explorer, when you reverse engineer it the way I just did now, it's going to give you all this other, I call it, well, it's not junk, but I've never used it, so it's junk to me. And I'm just going to delete it. So now I can go ahead and, File, Save As, and I can go and find a, a folder and, stick this code somewhere, but I won't do it. So that's how you generate the DDL code for views, and the same thing works for tables. Okay, let's get back to our clip. Okay, here we are in topic 4, drop a view with TSQL. Now, here's a little grumpy tip. Just make sure that you check for dependencies with the SP_depends function. It's a system store procedure before you drop the view. And also another little tip, a backup of the code used to create the original view, right? We're about to delete it, so it'd be great to have a copy of that code. So that's about it. I mean, let's take a look at how to drop the view with TSQL. It's really easy. Look at the code there. Well, there's the code for the SP_depends. You pass it the name of the view within single quotes. You can include the schema name too. So in this case, where we want to find the dependencies between, the dependencies for the view called department_employee_view that's in a master data schema. And there you see the results of the query, right? It's dependent on those two tables, master data department, master data employee, and then for each of the tables, the columns are basically listed. So looks like no harm is done if we drop this view, right? We're not going to do anything to the tables, and there's nothing else dependent on it like a stored procedure. So there's the command, drop view master_data .department_employee view, and that's really all that there is to it. So let's go ahead and let's do a demo. Okay, here's our last demo. We're going to drop a couple of views with TSQL. All right, let's run that SP_depends again. We'll check the HR employee department view. And we see that it's dependent on the department table and the employee table, and there's all the columns that it uses. So in this case, we're okay. We're dropping the view. There's no views that are dependent on it. So let's just run this drop view if exists, HR employee department view. Now, an alternate syntax for the drop view command is you just say drop view and the name of the view. But watch what happens if the view doesn't exist, because we just deleted it. We get an error message, right? So, this is probably the preferred format, the first one, drop view if exists. Because if I run it again, it doesn't exist, but it doesn't care, so you get no error. All right, so now SP depends employee salary view. It's the second view that we're going to delete. Well, it doesn't exist, so apparently I deleted it before, but I do have an employee EMP salary view. So let's just get rid of the full word, and let's drop view HR. Well, you know what? Another typo. Let's just get rid of this. Here we go. Let's get rid of this view and execute this command. So that's gone. And we have, do we have an employee salary view? No, we do not. That view is gone. Let's refresh this folder. Okay, we have one left, employee department view. So let's just put that name in here. We're cleaning everything up. We're getting rid of all the views. And might as well just do one more little refresher here. Let's drag this view name right here. And of course it decided to bring the square brackets with it. So SP depends, HR employee department view. There's the dependencies, the department table, employee table. So let's drop that view. Let us refresh this folder. And they're all gone. So that's it. That's how we create and drop views with SSMS and with TSQL. So let's just go and wrap things up. Let me save this script and see you back in the clip. Well, we made it. We made it through our podcast, and here's what we covered. We covered creating views with SSMS, Object Explorer, and also creating views with TSQL code. And then we wrap things up with dropping views with SSMS and dropping views with TSQL. Along the way, I showed you a system stored procedure called SP depends. Now, why is this important? A little pop quiz over there. Well, it's important because if you modify or alter a view, you might break other views. Store procedures and functions that are dependent on it. So, well, you definitely want to make sure that when you drop something, you're not going to, cause yourself a lot of headaches and trouble. All right. So make sure you use this before you change any database objects, not only views, but tables, store procedures, triggers, and functions. And we saw that there was two ways to check for these dependencies. One was with SP depends, and one was with clicking on the checkbox in the drop view panel. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you learned the basics of creating and dropping views. All right, now here's a list of my podcasts for the category of SQL Server tools. There's podcast T01, T for Tools, Installing SQL Server 2019. So this is probably the most important podcast, right? You want to download and install SQL Server 2019, the Developers Edition, which is free, right? This way you'll be able to do all these exercises that you're seeing in my podcasts. Next, you want to take podcast T02, Installing SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. That's what we've been using all along in the podcasts. Then there's podcast T03. This is Installing Data Tools 2019. This is installing data tools support in Visual Studio. In other words, within Visual Studio, you can create SQL Server related projects. And if you don't have Visual Studios, well, podcast T04 is for you. It shows you how to download and install Visual Studio 2019 Community. All right, make sure you download the community version. That's free. Then podcast T05 is installing reporting services. Okay, reporting services is a really important component of the BI SQL Server stack, right? This is a web-based architecture that will allow you to create and publish web reports based on SQL Server data and also data from other sources. Then podcast T06, there's a nice tool called Report Builder. This is the GUI that will allow you to create nice web-based reports and publish them to reporting services. And then last but not least is podcast T07, installing Power BI. There's that BI acronym, Business Intelligence. This is another sophisticated tool that will allow you to create very fancy scorecards and dashboards based on SQL Server data and Cube data and even spreadsheet data. So after you installed and learned how to use all these tools, not only will you be able to do all the demos of all my podcasts, but you'll know how to work with these tools to create a very powerful database or data warehouse architecture with the Microsoft BI stack. All right, let's just see what other normal or regular podcasts there are under the category of TSQL. Okay, let's wrap it up. Here's what's next. Okay, this series of podcasts, hopefully you've been following along and you took podcast 01 through 4, Navigating SSMS, where we learned how to use this SQL Server Management Studio tool. Then podcast 02, we learned about creating databases in SQL Server, and we created those databases with SSMS. And then podcast 03, creating tables, and podcast 04, creating views. This is the podcast we just finished. So our next podcast is 05, TSQL DML, Data Manipulation Language. Well, we're going to learn all about queries and joins and a whole bunch of other stuff. Then podcast 6 and 7 build on 5, and it will show you how to include built-in string and date functions in your queries. Podcast 08 will show you how to use the order by clause. This will basically let you define how the data that's returned by a query is sorted. But it'll also do a lot more, so check it out. There's more to the order by clause than just sorting data in ascending or descending order. And finally, podcast 09, the group by clause, right, which you add on to a TSQL query. This allows you to basically define groupings of data that are returned in a query. So you're asking, what's a group of data? Well, for example, if I want to select sales by calendar date, by customer, by product type and product subtype, and finally product, that's a group of data. And then you can add built-in sum and other mathematical functions in the query that you can use to basically apply to these groupings of data. Okay, so very, very powerful stuff. Okay, my next podcast again is going to be TSQL DML. And last but not least, a grumpy reminder and some shameless advertising. Be on the lookout this fall for my Grumpy University at grumpyolditguy.com for a buffet of TSQL courses to enhance your skills. See you in podcast 5.